Hi, my name is Keelie Sheridan, and I am the Artistic Director of the Irish Classical Theatre Company.
I'm Christie Baugher. I'm the book writer, composer, and lyricist of the Fitzgeralds of St.
All right, Christie. So, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little introduction on you, your artistry, how you got involved in composing and writing?
Sure. So I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, which is a really vibrant arts town. Mm-hmm. And I was a Disney kid, like a lot of like elder millennials. I really grew up with, The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And like a lot of musical theater artists of my generation, that was sort of my gateway drug into musical storytelling at large.
What were your favorite shows? Your favorite Disney?
You know what's funny? Pocahontas was the point, because at that point, Pocahontas came out when I was 11, and I saw it in the theater 10 times.
Whoa!
And I hit a point where I realized, I was like, oh, it's the songs that I'm really responding to. And then from there, I discovered Andrew Lloyd Webber and Phantom of the Opera, and just was off to the races. But I actually, Fitzgeralds of St. Paul was in the ASCAP workshop in Los Angeles last year, which is run by Stephen Schwartz. And so I told him that the Pocahontas was sort of the thing that got me started. And he said, "You're welcome, and I'm sorry." I was like, "No, it's great. It's great." I was like, "I'm a lifer." He's like, "I am too." So,
can you talk us a bit through your journey of that's sort of how you fell in love with this kind of work and telling stories through music? But what'd you do? How'd you go from, being a kid who liked musical storytelling to being somebody who does it for a living?
Yeah, I think I started out thinking maybe that I would be an actor, or, I knew that I wanted to be part of it in some way when I discovered theater. I was like, oh, I'm going to find my way into it. And then I remember just having a lightning bolt moment of like, oh, like these things are made by people.
Right.
I grew up, my dad and I went to the movies a lot, and he really impressed upon me that like the things that you love are made by people. And so I got to know the names of, Walt Disney and Steven Spielberg and all these people that were making the things, Alan Menken and Howard Ashman. Right. And I just had this moment of like, oh, I could make one of these things from scratch. Mm-hmm. I can find new stories to tell this way, and I loved music, and I loved wordplay, and it all just it just seemed like, for me, the perfect art form.
Yeah. Okay, so what initially drew you to the story of F. Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald? How did you find them?
So, The Great Gatsby is my favorite novel of all time, as it is for a lot of people. And I had a moment, so I went to NYU for grad school for musical theater writing. And my first couple of years out of NYU were really tough, because I went from being in school where you get to make theater all the time to barely getting to make theater at all, because New York's a really hard place to survive. Mm-hmm. And I'd hit a point where I was working a job where I was working overnight and not getting to see my friends, not getting to make theater, and I was really depressed, and I'd hit a point where I was about to move home. I was just like, I can't handle this anymore. And my brother reached out to me out of the blue and said, I heard a piece on NPR that I think you would really respond to. And it was Maureen Corrigan, who's one of the book critics for Fresh Air, wrote a book about the history of The Great Gatsby and how it became the book that we know it to be, the important piece of American literature that it is. And the thing that a lot of people don't know is that it didn't really take hold until 5 years after Scott Fitzgerald died.
Interesting.
It went out of print in his lifetime.
Whoa.
And the reason that it found popularity is that during World War II, a lot of the publishing houses sent their lesser selling titles off with soldiers to war. So there was just like random special edition of this that like soldiers have in their pockets, and they all came back from the war like, where has this book been?
Right.
And at that point Scott Fitzgerald died in 1940, and so he didn't get to see that happen. And so in this piece about the book, Maureen Corrigan read an excerpt from a letter that Scott Fitzgerald wrote to his editor not long before he died, asking to borrow money, but also asking that they put Gatsby back in print. And, you know, he said, you know, that he really believed in it, that he knew that it was a good book, and that the phrase that really stuck with me was, he said, in some small way, I hope I'm remembered as an original. And here I am at my cubicle in Times Square at 2 a.m. sobbing my face off.
Right.
But it deeply resonated with me, that idea of, like, you know, struggling, you know, being an artist and struggling to find the audience that will appreciate the thing that you make. So from there, I was like, oh, I need to read more about him. I need to read more of his stuff. I've only really read Gatsby. And so from there, I started reading about him, and then I started reading about Zelda. And suddenly the bigger picture of their lives was an obsession for me. It was just like a rabbit hole that I just went deeper and deeper down. And then from there, I got asked to write a couple songs for like a songwriters showcase event that was very low stakes. And I was like, at that point, I you know, because I decided, I was like, oh, New York theater doesn't care about me, and I'm moving home and whatever. I'm like, I'm just going to write a few songs. I'm going to write a song for him, a song for her, and a song for both of them, just for fun, and see how it goes. And those 3 songs, which are still in the show today.
Which 3 are they?
It's I'll Be Here, Pacific Time, and Dry. They were received better than anything I'd ever written. And, you know, I at the beginning of the showcase, I remember saying to the audience, I don't know if this is a thing. You know, I was just inspired by these people. This is just a fun experiment. Maybe it's a show. Right. And afterwards, like almost 2-1, everyone in the audience came up to me and said, it's a show and you have to write it.
Wow. How validating too, especially after that moment of doubt.
Yeah.
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 Can you talk a little bit about who are some of the writers, either past or present, that have influenced you and the way that you write musical theater?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really inspired by writers who put story and character first. I mean, Stephen Sondheim is the one that immediately comes to mind for most people. Howard Ashman, again, is a big influence on my work. And like present people, Janine Tesori too is another person where like every score that she writes sounds different. Everything, you know, content dictates form, and everything, you know, is in service of the world that she's building. That's the thing that's exciting to me, especially as somebody who writes a lot about real people and historical figures and time periods, is, you know, just really losing yourself in the specific world of the thing that you do. So, so writers who do that are really exciting to me.
And that seems really like what you've done with this piece too, because it feels like these songs, several of them, by and large, most of them, could exist in kind of the ethos of that time period. Was that your hope when you first started thinking about these characters, that it would sound like it could have been something that they were hearing playing in the background of their lives?
Yeah. The word that I like to use for what I do is I think myself as a synthesist.
Okay. Yeah.
I like to take, you know, there's such richness in like the styles of a time period. And so like, I like to take that, but also like bring my perspective as somebody who was born many years after that time period, and see what lives in the middle, see, you know, where the overlap is. So I definitely, I want it to sound, you know, of the era, but not pastiche, you know.
Sure.
Like I want it to also feel like something that a contemporary audience can hear and enjoy and find interesting.
Yeah. I think you've succeeded.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is a fictionalized version of real people's lives, and I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about how you find the balance of blending both the sort of autobiographical or the biographical facts with the creativity and the sort of imagination.
Totally. I think the thing that I always come back to in writing about real people is that time is linear, but life isn't. And so I think as a writer, your duty is to the emotional truth of a situation and not so much the point by point facts of a situation, because in the ways in which we think back on our own lives. You know, you're not thinking about, and then in 1989 I did this, and then in 1990 I did this. You're like,
Right.
no, this big thing happened, and it took me to this place, but then I met this person, and then, you know, like, there's more of a zigzag coily thing that happens with memory. And so there's a freedom in that, in being able to, you know, find the interesting way, the human way in which things connect, and rather than the Wikipedia, you know, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened.
Right.
You know, I do think the combination of, you know, committing to the emotional truth, and also the ways in which these people wrote and talked and thought, and you know, Zelda in particular was very richly poetic in the way she talked and the way she wrote. Her prose is very like dense in like descriptive detail, to the point that you get kind of lost in it. It's hard to almost follow the plot sometimes.
Okay.
And so I thought, okay, well, what is the way in which she would reconstruct this? And so you know, there is I feel a fidelity to actual events. Like, I'm not gonna like completely change what happened, but you know, but the way in which I tell the story, I think, is the thing where I get to bring my perspective.
Right. That's the artistry, right? Making it all make sense on a human level.
Totally.
So all of this is set in the past. A lot of the themes that occur in the piece, the ways that the characters struggle with fame and love and identity, mental illness, addiction, all of that feels very contemporary and relevant still. And I'm curious sort of what you hope an audience's experiences will be today with this piece, even though it seems maybe removed by time.
Totally. I think there's a lot of contemporary resonance in the story with influencer culture and reality TV, and the ways in which, you know, we mine narrative and, you know, put filters on our experiences for other people to consume.
Right.
You know, these are people who got very famous very young. In fact, I think that was really one of the defining events of their lives, is that, you know, he sold his first book and it was very successful, and he was never quite able to replicate that initial success.
Right.
You know, they you know, lived hard and party hard and drank and, you know, ran with circles, you know, in Paris, and you know, like, really put up the front of, we are fabulous people living fabulous lives, while they were burning through all the money that they had.
Right.
And that got harder and harder and took a toll on both of them in very different ways as time went on. So I really think that, you know, aside from the, you know, gender politics of the relationship and, you know, the things that I think will be particularly resonant for women in the audience, I also think just anyone who's ever, you know, been in a complicated relationship will find a lot to relate to, and you know, and anyone who feels that pressure to, you know, look perfect, you know, online when life is not so perfect. You know, I think those struggles are, you know, as present today, maybe even more so than they were in their time.
So this is the first time that the show is really up on its feet and kind of realized in a sort of fuller production sense. And I'm curious why it makes sense to do it here at Irish Classical, why Buffalo, and what your hope is for this step of the process.
I'm really excited to bring this to the Irish Classical audience, because I think, I mean, besides the fact that, you know, Scott Fitzgerald was Irish American, I think there is a going deeper into stories that you think you already know thing that really aligns with a lot of the work that you guys do.
Yeah.
And I didn't know until till you all reached out to me about the show, that Scott Fitzgerald spent a portion of his childhood in Buffalo.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, one of my dreams is to, have the show done in all of the places that are relevant to them. So,
Oh, wow.
I'd love to see it done in Montgomery, Alabama, and St. Paul, Minnesota, and Paris, and different places. So the idea of bringing it home to a place that was one of his homes is really exciting to me.
Christie, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me today. We're very lucky to have you here with us.
Thank you. It's a thrill to be here.
You can join us for the Fitzgeralds of St. Paul at the Irish Classical Theatre at 625 Main Street, November 8th through the 24th, 2025. Tickets are available at irishclassical.com. We'll see you there.